Hello, my name is Axel, and today I'm going to speak about sustainable versus intensive farming. So sustainable farming is about understanding and respecting the ecosystem. And that's why it's important to understand how the soil is created. So it starts with dead branches and dead leaves on the surface of the soil. Those will be eaten by little creatures. And those creatures, they will produce excrements that will be converted into humus by fungi and mushroom. And that's usually happening in the autumn and in the winter. And when the temperature raises in the spring, the bacteria will start to mineralize that humus. So it's called bacterial mineralization. So nutrients and minerals will be released. And when it starts raining, well, then those minerals and nutrients will go down into the soil. And that's where the horizontal roots of the trees play an important role, because they will absorb those minerals and nutrients. And the trees also have vertical roots that can go as deep as 150 meters. And they play a role because they usually bring the excess in rainwater down to the phreatic zone, to the groundwater. And those vertical roots, they will also release acid. And that acid will attack and convert rocks into clay. And to make a long story short, soil is a mixture of clay and humus. And that's where the worms play an important role. So the worms will ingest the clay, they will go back to the surface, they will ingest humus, and in their body they produce calcium. The calcium will fix the clay and the humus. So the excrements of the worms is what we call the soil. And in the tropical countries, it's the termites who play the role of the worms. So you see, it's the ecosystem is a closed system. It works perfectly well. Let's now look at what intensive farming did. So intensive farming brought, or at least removed, the trees from the farmlands. And secondly, they introduced mechanical ploughing. So that's the forceful overturning of and mashing of the soil. And that creates three problems. Because first of all, the organic matter will go underneath the surface. So the creatures that used to eat them can't reach them anymore. So the second problem is the mushroom and the fungi are aerobic creatures, so they need oxygen. So they cannot reach the excrements of the little creatures anymore. And thirdly, that organic matter is placed under the level of the horizontal roots of the trees. So whenever the minerals and nutrients are released, they will not be absorbed by the roots of the trees, but they will go down into the phreatic zone, where they will pollute the groundwater, they contaminate the groundwater. So intensive farming also introduced chemical fertilizers. So to make a long story short, it's about adding nitrogen to the soil. So nitrogen will stimulate the bacteria, but it will kill the fungi. So bacteria produces minerals, but they don't produce humus. So those chemical fertilizers, they will disrupt the balanced carbon nitrogen of the soil. And all those mineral and nutrients produced, there's nothing left to bring them back to the surface of the soil. So they will go down into the phreatic zone, where they will contaminate the groundwater. Intensive farming also introduces three types of pesticides. We have herbicides, insecticides, and fungicides. Well, those kill everything, including the useful organisms of the ecosystem. So intensive farming basically has degraded our soil in three ways. We have the biological degradation. All the worms, all the fungi, and all the creatures are dying. Secondly, we have the chemical degradation. All the minerals and nutrients are not fixed into the soil, but they go down into the phreatic zone, where they contaminate the groundwater. And thirdly, we have the physical degradation, because there's nothing left to fix the clay, the humus. So whenever it rains, the clay will just be flushed down to the rivers, where it will pollute the rivers. So to make a long story short, sustainable farming is about understanding and respecting the ecosystem. Intensive farming is about increasing the yield and production of farmlands. It's not so much about sustainability, but it's about increasing profits. So what should we do? First of all, the trees should be brought back to the farmlands. Secondly, the soil should not be overturned too much, because the organic matter should remain at the surface of the soil. Then a healthy soil needs a good relation between carbon and nitrogen. And then we should understand the role of all the creatures and worms and fungi, and we should monitor their health. And of course, we should look at eco-friendly alternatives to pesticides. And of course, when it comes to the role of science and technology, well, nature doesn't really need science and technology to make the ecosystem works. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.